Hello, this is the 47th lecture of the Semantic SEO course. In this lecture, we'll continue to examine our contextual vector. So in the last time, we actually talked about that there are three H2s directly inside this specific article. The reason for that is actually putting certain types of borders and certain types of consolidations for certain sections of the article. If you are able to consolidate the format and the context to the subsections of an article, the sections that are relevant to the certain sections in this query network, it will be easier for us to create relevance while also protecting the context. This is something that we call context sharpening. For instance, we don't use a list directly here, another list in this area, and also we don't repeat the same question or the same thing. Here we directly focus on the definition further. And then we actually directly focus on the symptoms, and from there we use a contextual bridge. And when we ask the symptoms of drinking too much water, the reason that we directly start from the color of urine or the bathroom trip frequency or drinking water without necessity, nausea, vomiting, headaches, fatigue, or low blood sugar. And all these things, they're actually ordered according to their popularity. Color of urine is a really popular symptom for many other diseases as well. If one of the symptoms are a kind of root attribute for many other entities from the same type, try to use it. In this case, color of urine, in the context of drinking too much water or water intoxication or different types of intoxication, or drinking or eating too much something else, which is another entity, it will always be there because it's one of the most important health signals. That's why it is at the top. Then color of urine and bathroom frequency, or urine and bathroom, these two things are actually connected to each other, and bathroom trip basically means doing something else. And drinking water without necessity is also one of the symptoms here. If you don't feel thirsty, but if you still continue to drink, it is one of the popular symptoms, especially for this one. So basically the things that we put to the top, some of these things are symptoms for other diseases as well, but some others are always and mostly relevant to this specific disease. So that's why we try to actually combine the specific symptoms and the most common symptoms, but the most popular ones always at the top. When you go to the specific bottom parts, difficult breathing, this is rare for this one. Confusion, double vision, or drowsiness, this is also rare. Colorless hands, feet, and lips, these are, or the low muscle cramps and the low blood sugar. Many other things can create these things as well. So that's why put most relevant symptoms and the popular ones to the top and try to create a kind of popularity and a kind of importance based on that, because according to the search engine, importance of something mainly comes from the search demand. So that's why we try to put these things especially at the top. Once we finish the symptoms, always be careful that you are giving more symptoms than your competitors while connecting all these things to each other. In other words, whenever we focus on some of these subsections, this will always be our main context here. So basically, in an article, we can tell that we always have a macro context. Directly it is here, and it will be reflected in entire web page all the time. And in some of the subsections like this, we always have some main contexts for these specific sub areas, but they are getting their main context from the root question. And root question takes its context from this area as well. And that's why I'm always telling that if you want to create a contextual vector, it always will need to be a straight line without any interruption. When it comes to our contextual bridge that we are using in this area, it's also a little bit tricky sometimes because we directly ask how scientists do define water intoxication. This is a variation or modification of the actual what is too much water intake, or what happens when you drink too much water, or basically what is water intoxication. We ask this question like that because I want to force my author to use more and more scientists and more institutions or the researchers. And beyond managing the authors to give more expert level of content, we also want to create a kind of transition area. That's why this is H2. Then we talk about the electrolyte loss and why it is related to water intoxication, which means that the term or the contextual term that appears after is it's the main entity in this question, and this is actually the minor entity in this question, which means that right now we are in the supplementary content and we are focusing on the micro semantics and the micro context. This is coming from macro context, but inside the question, it is not main entity. This is the main one. But we want to focus on this specific concept in terms of science, and we want to take only its definition and connection to the water intoxication. So we use this specific the concept or scientific term, especially after this question. And once we start to focus on some micro context in this area, then we ask, when is water intoxication common? Sports events and military training, these two things are not directly relevant to the drinking water or drinking too much water. But we take these two in terms of, again, intoxication, because during these events, it is happening. So slightly we are going away from water intoxication. Then we actually focus on how to calculate the correct water intake, which links to the water intake calculator. And then we ask, what is the opposite of water intoxication? And it is actually water dehydration, because we want to always focus on antonyms or opposites in the supplementary content, and how to calculate X intake, which is a query template. If you have a template, use it, and always use the most relevant context for that. So for calculating an X intake, to be able to use this template, we directly focus on the too much water concept. Then we also talk about intake here too, and it appears in this area too, and we justify this specific anchor text. Then we ask, what is the opposite of water intoxication? Then we use Boolean questions in this area, and we focus on infants and dogs, which appears in these areas or in these query networks as well. You can see the words like newborns or infants in these specific areas as well. And we distribute these specific context terms to our article while talking about slightly different areas. Then we talk about the treatment section at the end, and here we directly give an instruction list and list definition. We will talk about instruction list later, but basically the things that you see in these areas, this is an instruction list, because we always give a kind of predicate. But imagine that instead of telling what it does, here we tell what you should do. And we put treatment here to the bottom because it's the least important actual attribute directly, and at the same time we don't have that much anchor text here, as you see. So still we are able to actually talk about the treatment, and since we can't open a new page because there is no enough level of search demand, we put it to the bottom rather than actually put it to a different web page. So I know that getting the contextual vector as it should be, sometimes it's a little complicated. But once you are able to do these things by yourself, you will start to feel what kinds of a transition you should be creating or how you should order these things. And we will be together always in the community. Thank you.